Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new video. Now, RuneScape has been out for a while now, and throughout the years there have been a lot of updates to the game. We've received a lot of new items, a lot of new content updates. However, along the way there have been things that either were not popular enough to pass a poll, considered to be too overpowered, or for whatever reason the item was cancelled. And I think that's really interesting. So today I wanted to look at items that were never added to Oldschool Runescape for a multitude of reasons. I hope you guys enjoy the video, and let's get started. Now, first up here is an item that has been proposed a numerous amount of times and has actually failed a poll, I think, 3 separate occasions now, and that is the Divine Spirit Shield. The Divine Spirit Shield would have been created from the Divine Sigil, which would be a new drop from the Corporal Beast. The notable effect on the Divine Spirit Shield is it would have a 100% chance of reducing incoming damage by 30% at the cost of draining your prayer points by 50% of that 30% reduction. Now, it's been pretty close to passing a few times. In the most recent poll, it failed at about 65%. So it's not as controversial as some of these updates, but clearly the community doesn't really want it. I think with just this one item, it could have changed the meta in a pretty big way. So I think for that reason, it has failed every time. Now, the next item here is actually a set of items, but variants of these have come up now and again throughout the last 5 years. The main one being an upgraded prayer potion. Now, the first occurrence of this being polled was back when Nightmare Zone rewards were being proposed. In the Nightmare Zone reward shop, there was going to be an item proposed that would upgrade a prayer potion to a super prayer potion. It would require level 94 herblore to make. The super prayer potion would increase your prayer by 4 points more than a regular prayer potion dose. And on top of that, it could boost your prayer potion above its base level to do that, similar to how your hit points level can be increased beyond the max amount. Now, this failed a poll initially back in 2014, I believe, but also has failed more recently. On top of that, there was another item proposed as part of the Nightmare Zone reward shop, and that was the Energy Renewal Potion, requiring level 92 herblore to make. But the Energy Renewal Potion would restore all of your run energy and keep it topped up for 30 seconds. However, you would need level 96 herblore to do this. Both of these potions would have had a giant impact on the game, and we're actually extremely close to passing, so things could look a lot different now. The Energy Renewal Potion only failed with 71%, and the Super Prayer Potion failed with 69%, so both of them are very close. Okay, next up here we have the Amulet of Peril. Now, this was a proposed reward from the Revenant Caves. It never ended up passing, but it was rather close, failing with only around 65%. The Amulet of Peril would have been an item used only in the wilderness, and more specifically only in PvP combat. Essentially, they wanted the concept to be high risk versus high reward, similar to the Revenant Cave design philosophy. The Amulet of Peril would be a new tradable rare drop from the Revenant NPCs, which has the ability to increase your strength bonus based on how low your active hit points would be. So kind of similar to Durox, except that could then be applied to every weapon in the game essentially, as long as you had this amulet on. We're expecting the amulet to have a similar strength level to that of the Power Amulet when uncharged, and when fully charged offered slightly more bonuses than a Torture Amulet. Now, to actually charge the amulet, you actually needed to be in combat for a few minutes to actually start getting the charge up, so you wouldn't be able to fight NPCs with it. I can kind of see why that one didn't end up passing. Like, who knows what your max hit would have been after that, and every new best in slot weapon released later could then just be multiplied how much damage it could do. But again, it didn't really fail by that much. Now, next up here we have the Soul Bearer. The Soul Bearer was going to be an item that would allow you to transport ensouled heads to your bank. As most people realistically weren't on the Arceus spellbook, they ended up mostly being banked. And I think this was the whole point of this item. The Soul Bearer would be charged using Soul and Blood runes, with one charge being used for every ensouled head sent back to the bank. It was very close to passing at 71.9%, which was a very thin margin. So we didn't end up getting this item. A few reasons I think it didn't pass. One is, I think the whole point of the ensouled head was to be kind of opportunistic in getting prayer training. If you were just on the spellbook, you could get to drop, kill it there, and get some prayer experience. And 2, I don't really know if the unsold head drops are common enough to warrant an item that is now taking up an inventory slot in itself, but it was an interesting concept and again, very close to passing. Now, next up here we have the loot key scroll. Now this was fairly controversial when it came out. Essentially what the item would do is would create a loot key similar to Dead Man mode, and that would be dropped instead of all of the loot. So people in the Wilderness Pecan could pick up a lot of keys and not have to bank so frequently. However, all of them would be dropped upon death again. Similar to Dead Man mode, you could only hold 5 keys at a time, and you could only really turn them in at a bank. Now the actual item being added was the loot key scroll, which would have been a drop from the Revenant NPC. It would have been tradable as well as redeemable at Crystalia, and you'd only need 1, and after that you'd be able to toggle the ability on and off at your leisure. The intention of the loot key was to allow players to have more supplies and just generally not have to take up so much room with the loot. The only problem with this is you wouldn't be able to loot your opponent's food or prayer potions or anything like that, assuming you're killing another PvPer. Once again, the loot key scroll did end up failing, but only at around 65%, but this realistically could have changed the game in a pretty big way. Okay, next up here we have the Revenant Vambraces. These were never added to the game, but they were going to be an exclusive drop from the new Revenant Caves. The Revenant Vambraces would have been the best in slot ranged gloves, offering a slightly higher ranged attack bonus than Barrow's gloves, as well as a small increase in the ranged strength bonus. However, the defensive bonuses would be quite a bit lower, and the gloves would have required 40 defense to wear and 70 ranged. Now, these didn't end up passing, and I'm not really sure why the exact reason is. At the time, it didn't really seem like people wanted to really pass unique rewards. And if we look back at the Revenant Caves, there were some serious problems passing really any rewards. We have had the emblems for a long time, so I'm not really sure if there's anything theoretically wrong with the design philosophy. I think just the time and place weren't good, and I think most likely in the future we'll see an upgrade for the Barrow's gloves for ranged. Now, a lot of players make pure accounts or restricted accounts, and a lot of those accounts can't get combat experience. However, for a multitude of reasons, it can be pretty easy to mess those up. One suggestion to kind of remedy that is to add in a negative experience lamp. The last iteration of it being proposed was to be rewarded from Last Man Standing. The idea is that they would allow the player to remove a small amount of experience, minus 500, from a combat stat below 50. Doing so means players could fix their account by removing unwanted experience. The lamps could potentially also be used to remove experience awarded from quests, increasing the range of account builds possible for Pecan. Now, I think this is a pretty cool idea, but it did come with a few issues. One is that it would require a lot of engine work to implement into the game, and also it could kind of affect some kind of fringe account builds. By the way, it is an interesting idea, but I'm not sure if we're ever going to get it at this point. Okay, next up here is a really big set of items not passing, and that is the Elder Armor, the Kodai Robes, as well as the Twisted Armor. These were all to be rewards for the Chamber of Xeric. Elder Armor was to be tier 75 melee armor. It would require 75 defense to equip and would provide a significant defense bonus. I think the best offensive melee bonus in the game, as well as even a prayer bonus. Now, one thing to keep in mind about all of these is the items would be degradable. That was kind of the whole catch in how you could make them extremely good. But I think overall, people don't really like the idea of degradable armor. It's just kind of frustrating and it always makes you feel like you're losing something. In this case, using the full set would cost you around 80,000 GP an hour, so it's not that expensive. On top of that, we had the degradable mage robe with the Kodai robes. However, notably about this one is it doesn't actually provide a magic damage percent boost. And last up here we had the twisted armor, which would be essentially the same thing, but for ranged would be probably the best in slot ranged armor, but it would degrade. Okay, next up here we have the Staff of Paralysis. Now, I remember reading this not that long ago, and my first impression was, that sounds really troll to deal with. The Staff of Paralysis would be a one-handed staff, requires 70 magic to use, and you would charge it with nature runes, earth runes, and water runes. However, every cast that you use against your opponent would have a 1 in 10 chance of turning off your opponent's run energy. It probably wouldn't even be that good, but it would also be extremely annoying at the same time. It would just require you to be hyper focused on your run energy. It would probably make more sense maybe if it drained your run energy or something, because who would actually use that as opposed to just freezing your opponent? It's just a weird design. The last item on the list here is a reward from the Theater of Blood that never ended up passing, and that is the Judgement Prayer Scroll. The Judgement Prayer Scroll would unlock the Judgement Prayer, which would boost melee attacks and strength by 10%, but lower your own defense by 50%. However, if Judgement was active, 1/6 of any damage dealt by the user is removed from their prayer. I'm assuming that means your opponent's prayer. And it wasn't too close to passing at only around 60% of people voting yes for it. Realistically, this probably just failed because it was PvP oriented and it was coming from a PvM boss. I don't know. I guess thematically it doesn't make a lot of sense. And on top of that, PvP changes are kind of hard to pass anyway. Anyway guys, that is going to be it for today. Those are 10 items that were never added to Old School RuneScape. If you guys are interested in a follow-up video, I would appreciate it if you left the video a like. Thanks for watching guys, and I will see you next time.